Now back to our top story. 23 News reporter Jim Haggerty hears from a Beloit man who raises concerns after his 6-year-old son falls into an unmarked hole.
Tony Douglas says he's thankful his son only suffered bruises on his legs, hips, and torso, and he doesn't even want to think about how bad this could have been.
He was traumatized.
Tony Douglas said there was nothing amiss when his 6-year-old son started playing with a remote control car outside their residence on Partridge Avenue, until about 30 minutes later when a frantic neighbor brought his boy home.
The guy was literally at the door, knocking at the door, screaming. He was full of dirt all up and down, literally.
Charlie Haynes lives a few doors down and heard the boy screaming for help from inside a 6-foot deep hole dug by construction crews.
Somebody please help, crying, screaming, and I walked to the end of the driveway. I didn't see anything.
Haynes then heard more screams and realized where they were coming from.
And looked over and I seen hands and top of, barely could see the top of his head.
The hole was dug by crews hired by Alliant Energy, Beloit's electricity provider. Douglas says the workers failed to mark the hole with yellow tape and a cone, signaling pedestrians to be careful.
We have over 15 to 20 kids right here in this area that literally plays on this street.
The hole is now marked with cones and yellow police tape, but Douglas is still worried that crews may have missed others in the area.
I just say do better.
Alliant Energy reps were unavailable for an interview, but did release a statement saying their thoughts are with the Douglas family and that crews have confirmed with their contractor that the post holes are now properly marked.
Definitely a scary situation there.
Yes.
For sure. Thank you, Jim. An Alliant statement also indicates the company and its contractor are cooperating with Beloit police, who are investigating the incident.